Rebecca, and I am the Operations Manager here at Excite Media.
And I'm Laura, I'm the Head of SEO and Copywriting.
And today we are going to be going through on-page optimizations. So today is part 2 of kind of us going through our WTF is SEO book series, talking a little bit about each chapter and giving you guys some really helpful tips and tricks here live, talking you through in a bit more of a conversational style. So if you've missed part 1 on keyword research, go back and check that one out. But otherwise today we are going to be going through on-page optimizations. So I guess I'm using this phrase on-page optimizations. Laura, can you talk a little bit about what on-page optimizations are and what it really means for SEO?
Well, I think we named the chapter Does What It Says on the Tin. So it's the optimizations that you do on page. And when SEO specialists talk about on page versus off page is the stuff that has nothing to do with what's on the actual page. So it might be in the back end, or it might be even outside of your website altogether. On page is the stuff that you're implementing on the page and on the website. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, on-page optimization is also just the foundations of getting the page right. It's not even the content necessarily. It's just essentially the basics, the outline, how the page is set up, the structure of the page, and things like that. So I guess diving in a little bit to some of the elements of on-page optimizations, it's probably good to know. On-page optimization isn't necessarily going to make or break your website or make or break your rankings, but they're just good fundamentals to be able to really help search engines use your website really easily and well. So yeah, diving into our first on-page optimization we're going to talk about. Laura, do you want to dive a little bit into meta titles and meta descriptions? I know there's a bit of an argument in the SEO community whether these are even necessary now as well.
Yeah, so metadata, or your meta titles and meta descriptions, are basically what you put in the back of your page to show Google how it should display your website listing on the search engine results page. Now, the drama that Rebecca's just alluded to is the fact that Google will often rewrite these. Google will often rephrase your title so that it includes the keyword that somebody has searched for specifically, so they can better self-identify with your listing. And it'll also chop and change your description as well.
Yeah, so we can see here the Excite Media title and meta description. Laura, tell me a little bit about how you actually write your titles and descriptions.
Well, what's interesting about this is that is not the title that I wrote.
There we go.
I would never include the business name in that title because, as you can see just above it, it already says Excite Media, so that's wasting real estate. I believe what my title for this page actually is award-winning digital marketing agency Brisbane with a trophy emoji. So I'm also upset that they've removed my trophy. But what you basically want to do is have your primary keyword in that title. You want to have the city you're based in, or the city that you're targeting, in there, so that people can quickly identify that you're offering what they're searching for and that you're in the location they need you to be.
Yeah, absolutely. What we'll find here as well is Google's actually rewritten this title and put Excite Media in the meta title because that's what I searched. That's what I was looking for.
Exactly. And then with that description, we basically, there's 2 ideas here. You want to give a little bit of a taster of the page, a bit of a preview. You're also trying to encourage people to click through to the page, and often you want to have a bit of a call to action. So that might be get a proposal, get a quote, learn more if you're a little bit more corporate.
Awesome. So we've talked a little bit about meta descriptions there and, whether or not they're worth doing, but also how to write good ones. I guess the next step in all of this process is actually the page itself. So the actual on-page optimizations, beyond the title, beyond what's actually going to appear in the search engine results pages. And I think the thing to actually start with is the headings, the heading structure of the page. So I'm just going to pull up the Excite Media SEO page so we can look a little bit about how Laura structured it and her thinking behind it. So I guess, yeah, now we're looking at the actual structure of the page. Laura, talk to us a little bit, I guess, about how you go about approaching heading structure and how, I guess, that flows through actually the way that you structure your content.
Yeah, so in a very, very, very best practice world, SEO Brisbane is the H1. So that means it has the H1 header tag, and that basically tells Google that's the title of the page. That's what the entire page is about, and that's why that has the primary keyword in it. So SEO Brisbane is what I've elected to be the H1. Now, in that very, very, very best practice world, that should be the biggest title on the page as well. But realistically, I just wanted to give that context to the user, but I really want to have our USP front and center, which is why the H2, overtake your competitors, is actually a bit bigger. Now, like I said, that's not best practice, but it does work. So that's what I've done there.
Yeah, so I think it's always good to remember that just because sometimes there is the SEO best practices, there is the foundations, there are some instances where it's actually better to just tweak it slightly, which is what we have done here. And you can use styling components to actually change things a little bit around. Moving on though, we've also, along with our H1 and H2, it kind of really, you've broken up things like, I can see here, I know we mentioned a little bit in the very first video about using different versions of the keywords. So we can see here we've gone from SEO Brisbane to SEO agency in this H2 here, search engine optimization services, and you've just kind of broken it down into very clear sections. Do you want to talk a little bit, I guess, here I know we've got some H2s and some H3s. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you actually structure the content on the page?
Yeah, so there's two different ideas here, I suppose. So the first is the keyword structure. Now, what you'll notice as you're scrolling through the page is that each of the keywords that I've used are contextual. I haven't thrown them in for the sake of having them there. And then I guess the other idea is thinking about the user journey as they're going through the page. So when they land up the top of the page, what I want them to do is be able to quickly qualify that they're in the right place. They've searched for SEO on Google, they've clicked through, the title tells them this page is about SEO. Then the next thing I want them to see is a little bit of context about, well, what are we offering? We're an SEO agency and we're offering basically a monthly retainer service for SEO. Then we're going down and we're saying, well, here's why you should choose SEO over paid ads, because that's often when people are searching for SEO, they're often in a bit of a decision-making process. They know that they need something. They know that they want to show up on Google. They might not know whether they want to pay for that specifically with Google Ads or whether they want to take the organic route. So we're giving them a bit of context there.
So essentially what you're saying, Laura, is what you're doing is actually thinking about what the customers need and then integrating your keywords into those headings, but making it in a very much in the way that people think is how they approach the page. So you're thinking about how the keywords can go into those headings and then just placing the order of importance in the way that they think, as well as the importance of order of the keywords as well. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Essentially, we're basically wanting to put ourselves into the shoes of the user and think, what are the questions that are coming up and what are the objections?
Yeah, and you're just keeping it very, very organized for bots as well, isn't it? I think that's fundamentally what on-page optimization all comes down for. It's not even fully necessarily for the user, but it's just helping the actual bots that are crawling your website for the LLMs or Google or whatever search engine, just making it really easy for them to understand this section is about this section is about this, but also the hierarchy of the content. So what is more important? The stuff that sits under the H1 is the most important, and what sits under the H2s is more important, and then H3s is attributed to that, and so on and so forth. So we just want to make sure it's in a really systematic, clear way, rather than having a H6, then a H3, and then a H1, and then a H4, and then a H2, and so on and so forth. I think a lot of people, especially when they have websites developed, will have their styles attached to their H tags, and will actually think that changing the H tags is what changes the font size. But actually that is a really important thing that the bots are using to understand the content on your website.
Yes.
Moving, I guess, to another part of on-page optimization is URLs. Talking a little bit about, how the URL structure plays on your website, with which parent pages are parent pages, and keeping that URL really short and condensed. Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Your URL actually gives Google a lot of context about what the page is about. So like we were saying with the H1, where that should be the primary keyword, so too should your URL. Ideally, if our primary keyword is SEO Brisbane, then the URL makes sense to be excitemedia/SEO-Brisbane. Now, if for some reason search habits change in the next 6 months and I find that SEO Brisbane isn't my primary keyword anymore, it doesn't really make sense to change it to fit my primary keyword. We don't want to be changing URLs willy-nilly, but the URL should describe what the page is about.
Yeah, really keeping it simple as well. And I think as well is always thinking of that parent page structure as well, especially if you're someone who has multiple services that kind of fall under different levels as well. Keeping it very streamlined. If this is the overall service, and these are all the things that you can get done underneath as well. I think too many people just create a page and they don't actually think about that structure. So think about it really simply, that if you were creating like a map or almost like a family tree of pages, who sits under what? There's the matriarch and patriarch of the family, and then all the next parents, and then the next generation as well. So it's always good sometimes to think about your website actually in that format to kind of help you think through, okay, what actually should be the order. And I think it also speaks to Google when they're crawling your website, and we're talking about crawl budget, where Google can't actually afford to scrape your pages every single time. Which are the most important pages that Google always scrapes? Well, obviously your home page, in case there's something fundamentally that's changed about your business. But then those core service pages, because you might not be updating all of those auxiliary services as regularly. So it's good to just make sure that you are putting that structure in really close, really cleverly as well, that Google knows exactly what you actually want it to focus on, what you're the expert on. Moving, I guess, a little bit into another on-page optimization technique called schema. So essentially, I like to describe schema as it's like a form, and you're filling in the form for the bots. So rather than the bots having to crawl the page and be like, okay, I think this part's the business name, and I think this is the author of this blog post, and I think this is the date it was published, we're actually just giving the bots the information. So it allows these bots to really understand what the page is about straight off the bat. And schema can feel a little bit overwhelming because there are different types of schema. The search engines have put together types of schema. There are lots of schema builders online. You can do it through ChatGPT, where it creates the code for you, and then you can just pop the code in the header and the back end of your website. If you want a more detailed guide, you can pick up a copy of our book, WTF is SEO, to have a look at that. But if you are not doing schema, get stuck into schema. It's a very, very powerful foundational tool that really just kind of helps you set up yourself for success. Laura, I know we were just talking a little bit about the URL structure and the page structure. Do you want to talk a little bit about internal linking and how that all kind of wraps up in that?
Yeah, so I think the best place to start with internal linking is talking about page rank. Now, you kind of touched on this with how you're talking about how Google or search engines crawls websites to begin with. Your homepage is the most important page. So if you think about the ranking as like a literal hierarchy, you've got your homepage, and that should have the most page rank. And then you've got the pages that sit beneath that. So that might be your service page, it might be your about page. And then you've got your sub-services. If you think about almost like your main page having the juice, it flows down, and internal linking is how it flows the juice through. Is that a good analogy?
I like that. It's like putting tubes between the pages.
Yeah, the internal linking is the tubes in a weird science experiment.
And I think as well, it's important to also be able to help bots how pieces of content really relate to each other as well. I think a real prime example is if you have team profiles on your website and someone's posting on your blog, it's really easy to just link the author page to the team profile to be like, oh, this is the same person. And by you deliberately internally linking that, the bots don't have to figure it out again. And it just once again comes back. You just spoon feeding the information to the bots. It's just so they don't have to work it out. And obviously the author of the team is a very simple example, but it also really allows you to create content hierarchy, like Laura was saying, of those service pages being the most important. So always pushing up to those main service pages. But there is a big problem, Laura, isn't there, with people overdoing internal linking? And I think Wikipedia is the ultimate internal link, but I think too many people copy that kind of idea, don't they?
They certainly do. And I think you see this often in some websites where you maybe inherit a website with a new client coming on board, and you'll have a look and they'll have their brand name mentioned throughout. And every time on a service page they say their brand name, they're linking back to the homepage. The user knows how to get to the homepage from the service page. We don't need to help them out with that. And I think the best thing that you can do when you're working out where to put an internal link is get the bots out of your head and think about the actual user and where they're going to want to go next. So giving them more information. If I'm on, say, the SEO page on Excite Media and I'm talking about digital PR, it contextually makes sense to link off to the digital PR page or the content marketing page. So it's just about having the extra context.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those kind of niche parts of SEO where you can't just give someone a rule book and say, follow this. As much as we want to be able to tell you, use the internal links 6 times on these pages and you will rank #1 on Google, it's not that simple. Sometimes it is just a matter of common sense as well, you know, just being a little bit thoughtful. No one wants to go to a page where everything is blue, linked, underlined. That just makes you feel like the page doesn't actually have the information that you want on it. I need to go elsewhere and then I need to go here. But if you're clicking through on a website to clicking to like 3 pages, that means that website's done a really good job of internal linking, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So, and I guess the final simple on-page optimization law, alt tags. Do you want to talk a little bit about what alt tags are and why they're actually useful?
Yeah, so alt tags or alternative tags are basically an extra piece of data that you put on an image on your website. A really practical way to think about alt tags is to think about people with vision impairments who are using websites. If they can't see the image, they might be using a reader or another device to understand your page. If they need to use an alt tag to understand what your image is about, are you describing it in a way that they can understand to get the full experience of your page?
Absolutely. I think a lot of SEO specialists will tend to use a lot of keywords in the alt tags, thinking it's actually going to help them rank #1. Could you imagine being someone using a website and they go onto our SEO page and it's picture of SEO Brisbane, picture of Brisbane SEO, picture of SEO agency Brisbane? That's not going to be a very good experience for them as well. And I think sometimes, whilst we always talk about making it easy for the bots aren't stupid as well. So always think about that in the back of your head, that's actually not going to help them. And there are actual best practice guidelines. You can go onto the Google developer website and it will talk you through, especially if you have like pattern backgrounds and stuff, what kind of alt tags to be using for those sorts of things, where it's more of a visual component, not necessarily something that's helping users understand the context of the page or the content. So that's something as well to be thinking about in the back of your mind as well. Well, I guess, is there a quick win or a common mistake that people should really steer clear of on-page optimizations?
It's hard. I feel like there's like a Rolodex going through my head. I mean, there's the insane amount of internal links. There's linking back to your homepage every time you mention your brand name. There's every time you mention, say, a service on your homepage, linking to that service page over and over again. They've already had the opportunity to click through if they were going to.
They don't want it now.
Yeah. I guess, like you said, there is the stuffing of keywords into your alt tags. But I think the biggest one for me is the misuse of header tags and going from, having a H2 at the top and then your H1 doesn't come in until halfway down the page. Yeah. That doesn't make sense. What's your biggest quick win?
I think, honestly, my biggest quick win, I think it's more of a piece of advice, actually. Just don't overdo it. I think that is my overall advice for on-page optimizations. I think there's something that's really easy to implement, especially if you're not a technical person, that can feel like, yes, I've got this quick win book here now. Just don't overdo it. Just make it make sense for bots and the users. It's like speed optimization, which we'll get into a little bit later, but just don't overdo it. Make it a nice experience. Don't over-optimize for the sake of a bot, because your users are still going to use that website. And I think that is my biggest tip. Awesome. Well, if you have a question, make sure you put it in the comments below and we'll get back to you. Or if you're interested in having your SEO looked at by Laura here or any member of the Excite Media team, you can go to www.excitemedia.com.au to ask us a question or get in touch. Otherwise, stay tuned. Next week, we will be discussing the next chapter in our book, WTF is SEO. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.